Hello there. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing really well. We're going to give everyone a few moments to click on, get things under control, and most of all, get ready to enjoy a very insightful conversation. It's dubbed a webinar, but it's truly a conversation of great people. And this is how we're going to say. While you're waiting, I can see you all lining up here. Again, the list of people are putting in. I'm so happy you're here. We are going to take a few moments. We actually have a poll, very easy one, so that you can actually help a little bit the direction of this discussion. So let's see what the poll says. It says supporting families and businesses. I love that. So I'm going to launch it. Please feel free and vote, vote, vote. Thank you. I'm sure you can see it on the screen. So we have quite a few people that are going to be on, but don't worry because we're also going to be putting this up on the YouTube channel because you never know, something might happen. You might get a phone call in between. You might have things to do. Many of us usually get sidetracked. And so, not by our own choices, and especially families, there's usually somebody pulling you in another direction that you don't want to go. But as loving and amazing families that we are, we usually make sure that we're there for everyone. So, moving ahead, can I give some teasers out to you ladies? We've got some amazing speakers with us. Is there a doctor in the house? Yes, there is. There are three doctors in the house, Dr. Louise, Dr. Funke, and Dr. Catherine. And Dr. Miriam was going to be with us for today from our Connect group, for our Education Connect groups, but she's a little bit under the weather. So, but we want to give our hats off to her because she makes amazing things like this happen. So, do you ladies mind if I give away some of the poll already? And there's no secrets to state here. Is that okay? Okay, we've had a
Let's do it.
unanimous. Good. Okay, great. So, the first question was what has helped your family stay connected during this time? So, surprisingly enough, okay, so Louise, I'm going to actually put the ball in your court for a second. The three choices here, oh, sorry, there's actually four choices. Who's counting? Okay. Spending more time together, talking more openly, creating simple routines, supporting each other emotionally. Which one do you think was the top one, the top hit for there, Louise?
Oh my gosh, I've already forgotten all four.
Okay.
I was gonna say playing with a dog, but okay. Spending more time together. Let's go with that.
Brava. Okay, good. Probably because yeah, that's what I was. And surprisingly, no one has voted on talking more openly or supporting each other emotionally, creating simple routines. And I find that actually fascinating because I just lied. Someone just voted on that. Okay. So, but still the spending more time together is our top hit on that. So, just to make life more interesting, again, any of you that have signed on right now, there is a poll there so that you can help us direct a little bit the conversation because you know how webinars are. We want to make this a conversation. We don't want to make like you're just talked to. You don't want that. We want you to make sure that you're a really important component of this. And this actually is really helping. It's helping me. It helps me with the direction. So, oh gosh, Catherine, I think we have something here for you. How many thoughts do we have each day? So we have less than 1,000. We have 10,000. Oh, sorry, excuse me. 10,000, less than 10,000. The less is that way, so it's got to be less, okay? 10,000 to 40,000, 40,000 to 70,000, and greater than 70,000. So, who do you think? Who think is what they voted on as number of thoughts?
Either the second highest or the highest.
Nope, the lowest. The lowest. Because
Less than 10,000.
yes, yes. So just keep that in mind when we're going through our answers because it's never a dull moment here. Never is it? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm
And
very impressed with this
yeah.
audience so far. Very
Okay.
impressed.
Okay. So,
Hmm.
and what's one thing you've done that has really helped you get through the day? So, I'm going to end the poll because I can't see the answer there. Okay. So, I can put the poll up again later on, but I think, as they say, we should get this party started. Okay. So, let's end the poll. And let's see if I can see any other answers here to give you any tidbits. View details. Don't you love when you just have to read stuff? And that, of course, it'll kick me out, and then we can't see absolutely anything. So the top question had spending more time together, actually less than 10,000 thoughts per day, and uh, and it did a great cloud. So the cloud was evenly distributed. Okay, Dr. Funky, it was evenly distributed with traveling, positive thinking, spending time with friends, reading, talking, family
Lovely.
together. So those were the absolute answers to all those things. So let me try to get myself back in because this always okay, no, of course I can't find myself. Okay, results by respondents. Okay, so anyway, so you ladies are certainly on there. So let me take this time to welcome everyone. Today is about supporting families through uncertainty, not perfect answers, practical ways to feel more in control, grounded, and connected. We focus on what we can influence at home with our families in ourselves. And hopefully, this is something that will be wonderful to make sure that our businesses will grow. Again, special thanks from the Canadian Business Council and our lovely experts here today to make sure this is happening. And also thanks to our Connect Education head, which is Dr. Mariams, as she's always amazing. She's a bit under the weather, but she's welcome. So I think we should start up at one question at a time. Do you mind if I start with you, Dr. Funke? Would that be fine?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So when so much feels out of control, this uncertainty and what we've been hearing from other people, how do we create safety for our children at home?
Such a good question and timely of what we're going through because there is so much uncertainty. In essence, as psychologists, life is full of uncertainty, and it's how do we regulate ourselves? And that's quite a large word we use. But I think three important things matter, and it's about consistency. What stays the same? It's about how adults respond and the emotional availability. So let's go to the consistency. What stays the same? Routines. I know you will see quite a lot of information about bedtime routines, the time the child gets up. It's absolutely crucial because in a time of uncertainty, the most important thing that you actually want is consistency. Key as an adult to a child, how do we
This meeting is
respond?
being recorded.
Oops,
Whoops.
sorry. That happens.
It's absolutely fine. So going back to point two is how we as adults respond to our children. And we're human and we have a human experience where we have a range of emotions. But the whole point is how do we remain calm? Because our children, they mirror what's in their environment. So if we're very anxious, our kids will be anxious. So that controlling how we respond is absolutely important. And one of the things I like to say when I'm working with young people or adults is if you've ever watched Inside Out, there's lots of different emotions. One emotion is not better than the other. It's how do we allow the emotions to rise up and how do we regulate? So creating that safety is what stays the same, which is the routines, how we as an adult respond, and allowing emotions to be available, but also to be supported. So you're standing side by side your child. I can talk about this quite a bit. So I'll leave it right there.
Jump in here just because I've talked about this a couple of times in the past 5 weeks, so this seems appropriate, and it's kind of thinking about how can we think about uncertainty. And
Mm.
here I'm not so much talking about how do we think about events because they change literally tweet by tweet, so that's not a good place to look for certainty. But thinking about how do we ourselves, what are our own beliefs around the nature of uncertainty with respect to our own ability to control, behave, and live a life in that uncertainty. And that our anxiety around uncertainty is often made worse simply by the beliefs that we hold. And these beliefs are shaped by generally our own past experiences. So difficult things that we've had in our own lives, which tell us what we can handle or what we think we can handle. Sometimes we look at the experiences of others and we think, oh gosh, I'm not sure I could cope in the same ways. We start to also doubt our own abilities. So these beliefs that we have are shaped by many different things, but also just uncertainty feels bad. It's like any other negative emotion. It doesn't feel good. We want it out. We want it resolved. It drops our mood. It saps our motivation. It makes us irritable. It makes us kind of not feel in control of our emotions. So uncertainty, in short, is not nice. Um, and so what we need to do is kind of change how we think about that uncertainty. And I'm kind of going to challenge some of our listeners today to think about this and, is to consider things you've gone through in the past. And I know we don't like to think about these things, but sometimes there's value in doing so. So maybe you've gone through a divorce. Maybe you've gone through a period of grief. Maybe you've just maybe had your car broken into, and even if it wasn't traumatic in itself, but it's simply to say that in all of these events, you handled it. Either you called somebody, either you jumped on the phone and dialed 999. Either you did some research, either you found more information, made some lists, you organized yourself, maybe you packed the go bag in our current instance. But the point I'm trying to make is that we can shift how we think about uncertainty simply by looking in our past for previous evidence of our own coping. And I'd go even further than that. Think about the things that have happened to you where you didn't even have a plan at all. And somehow you just kind of figure it out on the spot. I like to call it the philosophy of just winging it. You just kind of like whatever, and somehow you make it through. And that's the evidence we need to be looking for. So we can shift our relationship with uncertainty and think about what are the times when I created certainty for myself through my own very actions, and to consider that this will be exactly the same. You will rise to the occasion. You will figure it out. We've been figuring it out for the past 5 weeks. So even if this lasts another week, 2 weeks, 2 months, nobody wants that. But the bottom line is we can. The time.
Fabulous. Can you hear me now? I had to take
Yes.
myself off video and we're no longer doing that wavy sound, which is so much fun. Okay. So I really appreciate the fact because it's, if there's like so much uncertainty in is it the environment or but what Dr. Catherine, what I'm thinking about, what's actually happening like inside of us? How do you tell the
Mm,
difference between feelings, thinking, overthinking? I think overthinking is a big deal here. Okay.
huge. And this is a perfect segue actually from Dr. Louise, because Dr. Louise was talking about how our past experience shapes us. And that's exactly what's happening in the brain. Your brain isn't saying what's happening. It's saying, what is this most like? What can I refer this to? So the data in your brain is basically going back and trying to grab certainty. It's trying to fill in the gaps. So I'll give you an example, with the first, let's say, large boom that we heard, I'm sure everyone would have heard it at once. If you have little kids or just kids, you probably try to explain it to them using what? What happens in the sky that's really, really loud, but isn't scary? Fireworks, likely. So they would probably run to you and said, oh, Mom, Dad, what's happening? Heart rate would have been up, breathing patterns would have been up, so their nervous system would have been elevated. And from a feeling point of view, which I'll get to in a second, your brain is basically saying, is this pleasant or is this unpleasant? It's called balance in very like scientific terms. But basically, the kid is probably saying, I don't like this feeling. So they're coming to you and saying, I don't understand this. And because they have no reference, you're giving them a reference point. You're saying, this is kind of like fireworks. So what does this mean? Feelings and emotions are actually just guesses. That's how our brain works. So we're not born with a neat set like software of emotions. We don't, you know how they used to, I mean, this is many, many, many years ago when they used to teach us like the happy face and the sad face. And it was almost like we had those emotions when we grew up or when we were born. Emotions are built over time, they're not built in, meaning that when there's uncertainty, our brain is basically trying to make sense of things. So, feelings and emotions, which I'm just grouping them together, what I would invite you to think of them as just guesses, and they're guesses based on past experience. Now, where does thinking come in? All right, so I was just walking my dogs at the, if you live on the Palm, you'll know that our beautiful park is being ripped down and there's construction everywhere. And of course, I'm in my own mind walking my dogs. And all of a sudden, I hear this massive boom. And I was just freaking out. Now, 2 months ago, I would have just thought, well, this makes sense. I'm right next to a construction site. Of course, it's probably just construction. But because of the past situation in the past 5 weeks, my brain immediately went to what is this most like? Ah, a boom in the sky. So the emotion was made sense with a thought. Thought is trying to explain what's going on in your body and mind, if that makes sense. Now, to couple this all off, what is overthinking? Now, you did the poll, and let me just tell you, you guys are geniuses because I have never in all of my career had people give the right answer. We actually have about 6,500 thoughts a day. Oftentimes we think that we have about 80,000, 90,000, but we have about 6,500 thoughts a day. So what is overthinking? Is overthinking having 9,000 thoughts a day? 12,000 thoughts a day? The best way to think about overthinking is when the search for a solution becomes unhelpful or unhealthy. And so that's really what's happening now. So if we put all this together with the emotions, with feeling overwhelmed, with feeling uncertain, our mind is constantly trying to say, what is this most like? How can I rationalize this uncertainty? So hopefully that helps a little. And your exam is going to be at the end, by the way. So I hope you remembered everything. But that's really what's happening in the brain. So the name of the game here, emotions are just guesses. So when your kid is having a tantrum, their brain is saying, I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to make sense of this. Your thoughts are trying to explain that guess.
Oh, well, I'm trying to think of the number that I have happening of the thoughts. Oh, look at, I'm on screen. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I love technology. So yeah, I was probably overthinking at a moment going, how do I get the video back on? Those were the I think of, what did you say, 65,000, maybe 40,000 were in that slot at the moment. But I really like the idea of giving it explanations of like fireworks in the sky or things like that. I think there's something tangible. I've seen on a lot of the women's and the moms chat groups, there were some of the moms were actually explaining that to a certain point, especially on the age groups. But again, too, just remember the chat box is open just in case anybody wants to write something for questioning. And then if we have times, we can just even open up the mics if there's not any, background sound and feed. And also, please remember that at the end, we will be connecting you with these lovely professionals, and you might want to take the talk more personally. It's understandable if you don't have any questions or if you just don't feel like sharing at the moment, but we want to make this a safe place. And so please, feel free to do what you think might help. So if you don't mind, I'd like to take this a little bit and bring it kind of back to real life at home. Dr. Funky, can I ask you, when children say I'm fine, I mean, I know when I say I'm fine, my husband's in big trouble. But when children say I'm fine, how do we support them without pushing them?
Beautiful. I think the important thing is to not look at I'm fine as a wall. There's something about that word I'm fine. And it could be your child saying, I don't have the words yet, but I can say I'm fine. Or I don't want to worry you, but I'm going to say I'm fine. Or I'm trying to cope. Either way, the most important thing we need to do is not push, not to say, but you don't look fine.
Uh,
There's something powerful about the words we use. And it's the invitation, the curiosity. You say, I noticed that you don't seem like yourself. That in itself is that you're showing your child that there's something's not right, or something's I can see something's a bit unsteady, and you're inviting them. Now, not all children have the emotional literacy vocabulary. Even adults don't have it. So what I think is helpful is if I was to say what color you feel today, what would you say? And they may say, I feel white. And you might say, oh, but you don't seem white. But white in your interpretation might be different. I remember working with a young person, and then they said they felt white. And I said, oh, tell me about why you feel white. Well, I feel invisible. And that in itself was such a powerful way of understanding what's going on past the emotional literacy. And it's looking at that word fine, looking at the iceberg. We can see what's on the top, but we don't know what's going on underneath. And that's why the emotional literacy, naming our emotions. And I love what Dr. Catherine's talking about, our thoughts and our overthinking. And it's important for us to understand that we have we have emotions. Yes, they may be based on the environment that we've grown up in, but it's important to name them, because when we name what we're feeling, the power we have is when we suppress what we're feeling, that it may come up in 2 weeks, 5 weeks. Like Dr. Catherine said, when she heard the explosion, it could be fireworks, but we know that there's an association that's happened now. We know that we hear loud bangs. We think, is it a missile or is it something else? So now we name, oh, I feel a bit uncomfortable when I hear that. But how do we do that? We create the environment for where these conversations can happen. And we don't go ahead of our children. We stand side by side.
wow. Yeah. And I guess it's also hard for the parent that actually is going to place that question, because you're just, I guess, trying to help. So, the question is coming from a good place, but I guess the non-pushing is great, really
And
important.
I think to add is, as parents, to just give ourselves some time, is we don't have to try and fix things. We want to fix it. And sometimes we have to sit with being uncomfortable and being uncertain.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you transitioned into that, because it's not just children. We feel this too, like as adults, we're feeling it too. So maybe we could transition to Catherine on that. When things start to get like quiet and the mind starts to spiral, okay? I mean, I don't know, it goes down that rabbit hole, from the famous rabbit hole and never comes back. Okay, instead of settling, what does that entail?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes silence is even worse, isn't it? Or even at the end of the day, you're running after kids, you're cleaning up, the dog has like thrown up in the kids' dishes, and then there's paint everywhere, and you're just racing around. You're like, oh my God, is this day ever gonna end? Kids finally go to bed, and you're like, yes, now just me and Bridgerton, come at me. And so you're on the couch and you're like, maybe a little black glass of vino, who knows? And you're finally settled. And you're like, ah. And then all of a sudden, every single tab that you have ever opened since 1987 in your brain suddenly opens up. And now you're thinking about that one thing that you said back in 1990 to the guy that you will never ever meet again. And you're like, what is going on? So there's three different main systems in the brain. We have our salience center. Salience is basically, think of it like the newsroom, constantly looking out. Is there any emotional threat that we need to be aware of? Then we have the logical part of our brain. This is like zooming out. It's saying, okay, does this make sense? During the day, this is really active. It's constantly looking outward. It's thinking about the outside world, if you will. At night, this one gets a little bit more fatigued. It doesn't do the greatest job at thinking logically because there's this other part of our brain called the default mode network. And just think of it kind of like those tabs, constant chatterbox. And because the logical brain isn't really as strong, this default mode network is like, let's have a field day thinking about all the things that could go wrong right now. Let's have some fun. So the name of the game here is this. The first step is just really realizing that your brain is just on idle mode. We all have it. This part of the brain actually uses up to 80% of its energy. It's like that screensaver that never ever turns off. Now, this can be linked. It was actually at one point predicted, high activity in this area was predicted for Nobel Prize winners. This is really important for creativity. But when all this is happening, it looks at the world through a lens of threat. And this is what's happening when you sit down with your Pinot Grigio and your Bridgerton. The brain is just saying, nah, I do not like this silence. A bad thing's going to happen because, again, it's trying to predict what's going to happen in the future based on silence that has happened in the past, which is it's nice and silent. And then this gives you a heart attack, sorry, the phone, with those damn missile threats. So you're just waiting for that to happen because the newsroom is constantly just waiting for something bad to happen. So the name of the game here is this. Remember that your brain is actually just doing its job. Just right now, it's just a little bit wonky because of everything going on. So don't be too hard on yourself or your brain.
Well, yeah, thank you. What I really like about this session is the fact that you kind of made us all feel like, oh, yeah, I've done that. Oh, I really appreciate the methods of how I can maybe overcome overthinking or what other factual matters that you're talking about, the 10,000, 65,000, anyway. But I also want to know how like Dr. Louise, you could probably help us on this. So how do we move forward through all of this? Okay. How do we move forward? Forward is like, is everyone stuck in park or something? Are they stuck in park? Like in
Yeah,
their
I love
cars?
that analogy.
Are they like grinding gears here or
I
something?
I
Because,
think so. Yeah.
okay.
So I think we've hit phase two, probably even phase three. So phase one is, oh my gosh, coping, 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 the noise, the anxiety, can't sleep. Do I need to pack? Do we need to go? Where? And then, eventually we're like, we got it. Okay, we're kind of bored. We're kind of over this now, but we're still stuck. And that's that kind of stuck in neutral. And I think there it becomes important to also shift where we pay attention. So initially, we're paying attention to our emotions. We're
Mhm.
also paying a lot of attention to our physiological symptoms. Your heart racing, breaking out in a sweat, can't sleep. Um, and then, we're trying to make sense of it. So our thinking, what's going to happen? What about this? What about that? And now I think we've kind of hit that third stage. It's time to act. And this is
Okay.
really powerful because it moves us from waiting, looking externally to, is this going to finish? Can I get on with life now?
Mm.
Better check the tweets, check the tweet update. And that waiting also contributes to this sense of helplessness, kind of a wasting time. We're getting irritated. Like, come on, we have a life to live. The sense we're wasting time almost. And so I would invite people to start thinking about kind of this notion of character. And character is really, who are you? How do you want to move through this? How do you want to show up? What is it you want to do? Now, these sound like big kind of meaning of life questions, and they're not that complicated, and they don't involve you having to, overhaul your whole personality, but it's just thinking about who are you at your best. So, for example, I like to think I'm kind of funny. People may disagree, but haha. But humor is something that I use to cope, but humor is also something that brings out the best side of me. And that is something I can use to help myself move forward. For other people, it's kindness. Other people, it's being helpful. Other people, it's thinking about meaning and purpose, prayer,
Mm.
contribution, volunteering. In this past month, I heard of a woman here in Dubai. She's like, my skill was baking bread. Okay. So every night she baked a loaf of bread, knocked at a new neighbor's door, and got to know people. And the
Mhm.
excuse, the pathway to do that was the loaf of bread. So it's thinking about who are you? What comes naturally to you? And instead of leaning out and waiting for this to end, let's lean in and let's start doing and taking action by acting on your best self. And that kind of creates momentum. We start to take steps, we start to move, but we start as we do moving forward, you start to see more avenues in which you can take action. You may find more avenues in which you can help other people. You might start to think differently about your business. Hey, we could pivot this way. We could pivot that way. Actually, we thought of this 2 years ago and postponed it. Why don't we do that now? It's a great time.
Mhm.
So as you start thinking about taking action, I think this is how we move forward. So instead of how do I feel? How can we think about this? What are you going to do? And
Mm.
that really sets up a really nice role modeling, because then we're thinking about parents, but friends, colleagues, people we encounter every day. And when you start showing up at your best, it also gives people an invitation and also permission for others to do the same. And they start seeing and taking their cue. Yeah, let's get on with it. We need to go to the gym. We're going to go for a walk tonight. We're going to do games tonight. Let's invite the neighbors. And I think that's my ultimate advice is, this has taken so much away from us. I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but we need to kind of resist this urge to give the rest away for free. No,
Mm.
we lean in by being ourselves, and we start living our lives.
I love this idea of that they have to lean into being their best self. And I want the name of the lady baking bread, by the way, because but that's another story.
Kind of, yeah.
But
No more
I
holding
like
our breath. Let's move
no
on.
more holding our breath. Yeah, it's waiting for things to settle, waiting for the dust to settle, but uh, I, yes, I mean, everyone
We
has
can
to
walk
do
in the
what
dust. Yeah.
you can walk in the dust, yeah, because we're fortunate enough to have the shower to dust off. Okay, well, that's it. But let's again, those are great examples. But I'd like to even make this kind of a practical. There's always people. Again, we love practicality, and we know why because we've got two Capricorns on here. So we'd like to have some practical ideas on what maybe one or two habits that families can use to stay steady and connected. And maybe you could lean in onto this to Dr. Funk. I would really appreciate it. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute. Oops, oops. We
I'm
like it's
on.
Zoom.
I was on mute. I thought I'd never have to hear me saying someone telling me I'm on mute. Apologies for that.
No,
Habits, habits,
go ahead.
habits. I mean, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly, but we're going to focus on the good habits and thinking about just one or two habits. I'm sure you're doing a lot anyway. And, depending on which research element you're going towards, it takes 63 days for a habit to stick. And you think how long we've been doing distance learning, we're coming kind of close to those days as time goes on. But one thing I will say that is important is the emotional check-in. And I know maybe because I'm a clinical psychologist, I'm all about emotions, but it's just checking in. Now, it's not, as I said, about how are you doing or what you're feeling. So, for instance, the habit might be you want your child to make their bed. And since the distance learning, they're not making their bed. They're hardly getting out of bed. From our teens, I'm hearing some stories that school starts at 8, they're still in their 90 and they've lost the habit of making their bed. So what you might do now is you go in their room just before online learning starts and you make the bed with them rather than say make your bed. And whilst you're making the bed with them, what's one thing that's made you smile this morning, or what made your heart smile yesterday? Or so you start bringing in that emotional literacy whilst you're doing something with them. Now, the key factor is that you can also do something like a shared meal when you're having a mealtime. And I love the story about the lady baking breads and so forth. But
Mm.
that connection is so powerful. One of the things that we noticed from COVID was the loss of social connection. And one of the areas that we're looking at closely is we're being proactive. We know that our young people are going to go back to school. They've lost a few of their habits, but they're not connecting. So developing that connection and making sure that we're not keeping them away from connecting with themselves, connecting with you, and connecting with their friends. So whether it's a shared meal, going for a walk, hanging out with the neighbors, having these conversations, keeping it routine based. As I mentioned in my first answer, being consistent with routine creates that sense of safety, develops a good habit, and you're not only being your best self, but you're also creating a family where we are thriving. We're thriving through this despite the uncertainty. Because I believe no matter what's going on in this world, the one thing we have control over is our mind. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. Things can happen, but you can wake up and you can say, I am going to do this. And that's the habit to overcome this. And you keep the consistency going, and you will see the behavior change eventually.
Well, that is truly food for thought. And I love the idea of instead of storming in and going, make your bed. I like the idea. So you can just kind of lean over and, oh, you want me to, want me to tuck that in? That's kind of uncomfortable over there or something like that. Oh, goodness, it's Wednesday. Do you want to change your sheets? Let's pick the flowered ones or something like that, and there's nothing better than going to bed in fresh sheets. Come
Oh,
on, we know
I
that. So
love
we
that.
know that feeling. Um, it was actually amazing because a lot of people may not see you all four together on the screen, or all four of us, sorry, together on the screen. There were certain comments that you were making, Dr. Fung, and the other two doctors are like, yeah, yeah. So we appreciate to see that the enthusiasm behind of this. We want to know if there's any other questions in the crowd. Please go ahead and do so. We also want to take this time also to thank for obviously our keynote speakers, our gems, our other sister councils to get all onto this. We will obviously tidy up some of the video where I'm talking by myself there for a while, and be able to put that out onto the YouTube channel so that these are really good words of wisdom. Please make sure that you share them with other people. I'm just going to there's one question I see on my end, and there's a couple of thank yous coming, which is great that we appreciate the thank yous. But the one question I had on my end, and also that came into the chat with prior, is how does this loop with for families also help with maybe the businesses? Like, I mean, and it's kind of maybe an obvious answer, but does any one of you want to chime in on one of how this could be like a whole circle effect? I mean, that they always say you're only as happy as your unhappiest child, dog, mate, or whatever. So you decide, is there any reason why we want to take this more at heart so that we can create community?
I think this notion of uncertainty doesn't just affect us at 3 a.m. when we can't sleep. It doesn't only affect parenting and how we interact with others, but it also affects productivity at work. You're rereading the same email, you're trying to, write a contract, you're having to go back and, look in old files, you're getting lost. So I think what we've been saying, it might sound like a cutesy little advice, but really paying attention, getting on top of our thoughts, trying to find ways to kind of reduce that physiological stress, because that really also messes with your thoughts, getting on top of these habits. And Dr. Funky, you talked about earlier, just, the bedtime habits to get regular sleep for kids. That applies to adults as well. So when we're not sleeping well, we're changing our sleeping times. That makes it harder for us to regulate our emotions, but also to be at our cognitive, our thinking best the following day. It also makes us more irritable with people, including colleagues, managers, teams. So, but and at the same time, it's thinking about how can we be of service. We work in teams, we work with colleagues, we all have, or most still have parents, brothers, sisters, whatnot. And it's thinking about how do we continue to build and maintain social capital, these relationships that we have. And we've all had this experience during COVID. You kind of say, oh, I'll wait till this is over. And then a year goes by and those people have moved on.
Yeah.
And we quickly lose friends that way. And that's
Yeah.
not just losing friends and having extra spare time, but when we don't have those people around us, it also impacts how we think. It makes it harder for us to manage our emotions because now that that break on reality that other people provide for us is no longer there. So it becomes more and more difficult. And this is then where mental health issues come in, happiness starts to drop, and life is impacted tremendously. So while these sound like little tiny habits, they will make or break this event for people. So sleep, friends, and I'm going to add, get a sense of humor. We're going to need it. Um, and that's not to trivialize, but think about what happens when you laugh. It resets your breathing automatically. It shifts your thinking from the doom and gloom to, whew, it puts the situation back into perspective, back down to size, and it makes us kinder and less likely to focus on us, but more likely to reach out to others and to pull them in and to maintain that network around us.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I like the idea that you also said that somebody could be at work and something pops up in their mind. And heavens to Betsy, you're at work and one of the alerts went off while you were at work and your children are at home or elsewhere. I'm sure that, that creates another type of whole ball game. But I like the reality of it. You don't know when that thought is going to creep into your mind. I do think when you're watching the Bridgertons at a certain hour, well, that will really happen because it's quiet time and you're thinking, I'm just going to do it. Um, I think what we do have other questions. They want to know how they're going to be able to get a hold of you. And I said, with the follow-up emails and whatnot, we'll be able to do that. We will be having on hopefully live session of this as well coming up soon too, because I find that it'll be a great time where people can interact with each other. Uh, Actually, you know what? I think we're really good with timing. We've been absolutely excellent. I'm so proud of you all, uh, considering even the technology of Zoom every once in a while. So I was wondering if we could be so kind and do a round of, some take-home message, maybe something people can apply immediately to what's happening, or whatever comes to your mind. We actually started with Louise just with that round there, but we're going to end now with Louise. So why don't we, Catherine, why don't you go ahead, and is there some kind of maybe take home message or something you'd like to say?
For sure. Physiology always trumps psychology. Your body, if your mind, if you can't get a hold of your mind, focus on the body. So my dad was a respiratory neurophysiologist, meaning that he studied breathing. He actually studied hiccups when I was a kid, which I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. But I
Mhm.
grew up really, I guess, being taught what's happening in the body. And I think if we have more knowledge with what's happening, we can better manage it. And the best thing to do, if everything is, going for shit, breathe out, exhale. Now, why this works is when you exhale, your heart actually gets a little bit smaller. So it gets sort of compressed. The blood goes a little bit faster in it. And this sends a signal up to your brain, hey, I'm going a little bit too fast. You need to slow me down. The brain looks down and says, okay, no problem. I'm going to turn on the more rest part of my nervous system. It says, okay. And it slows you down. So there's two different sides of our nervous system, one that sort of is more active and one that calms us down. Exhaling immediately triggers the calm part of the nervous system in one breath. So just take a deep exhale. Maybe don't do it like when your boss has just said something really cranky and you're like, you don't a little bit like, let's just tone it back a bit. But exhaling is the most important thing. And you see this especially in kids that are having tantrums. They'll come to you and they're panicked. Their breath is just going really, really fast. There's no way to talk sense in them. Parents will naturally say, just breathe. It's a natural instinct for us to do. So focusing on the exhale.
I like that. And then obviously re-inhale afterwards. We want no blue skin people there. Okay. Just keep the cycle going. Okay. But Dr. Funky, maybe you'd like to give us some
I, I
points.
love that, Dr. Catherine. I think I'm all about framework. So if there's anything I want to share with you today, it's to think of the acronym SAFE. And the S stands for steadiness. The A stands for awareness. The F stands for fine is not final. And the E stands for everyday habit. And I want you to do something after this webinar, and it's going to sound a bit odd, but I want you to, and maybe do this with your children, is to hug yourself. I'm not asking you to hug your children. Practice hugging yourself. And it sounds odd, but it's the way that when you hug yourself, you actually, the brain and the body start connecting, and it creates that sense of safety and connection. I want you to try it and then feedback to Diane if it actually works, but it does. It's something that I recommend. We hug ourselves. We do it for ourselves as adults, and we also show our young children or older children how to hug themselves. In a way, it's how do we actually start loving ourselves? Because it starts with us when it concerns loving ourselves.
I love that. That seems actually so natural. It's like if you've ever seen someone uh, that needs a hug, like
Yeah,
someone you know as a friend, would you go, oh, come. So yeah, so I think sometimes maybe if we start with ourselves, maybe we again, like they said, put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. Maybe hug yourself first before hugging others, or if you can do both, maybe I don't know. So there's some way to do that.
yeah.
All right. So I think if you don't mind, did you mind closing this part of this up for us, Dr. Louise? That would be lovely. I'm sure something has come to mind that's witty and wonderful and all that.
Oh gosh, I will try. It, well, it's not quite where you guys are going. It's more around, we're all tempted, and me too. Like I've been reaching for my phone because I'm like dying to see, is there a new tweet or what's going on in the street today? Like, what?
Mhm.
And it's kind of like, how do we get our information? Because it's good to stay informed, but what many of us do, we get on Instagram and we start scrolling. And there's a couple of things that happen with social media. One, I like to compare it to kind of like eating chips. It's good, but they're empty calories. So after you eat chips, you're still going to want to eat properly after because you haven't really been nourished. And social media is the same thing. It's these little clips, one-liners, 2-second videos. They don't actually nourish us. So the information they give us, we feel like we're getting information, but then at the end you're like, okay, but I still don't know what's happening. And I don't think the advice of get off social media is good or reasonable, or, unless that works for you, um, or people who say, okay, I'm just not going to follow the news. I think this is where good journalism really pays off. But also, it's a way to quiet the mind and to get our questions answered so that we don't need to keep searching. So, it's a way to get certainty when we feel uncertain. Now, good journalism, its purpose is to inform, not to sell you something and not to get you just to be clicking. Um, and the other thing with good journalism is that it does inform you. It gives you context, whether it's political, economic, historical, whatever it may be. And that allows you to go, oh, I get it. I hadn't really thought about it that way. And it's also on one screen generally. So if you're going to get information, great, do it, but get a good source. And that's another way to achieve certainty. But also, if we think about social media, it's addictive in itself. And while you're doing this, you're not playing with your kids, you're not getting sleep, you're not cooking something good like bread, um, and it starts to make us unhappy the more time we spend on it. So to think about, get your needs met, get your need for information, but do it in a way that maintains a sense of control and happiness and that fills you up. That's
Oh,
not really uplifting. Okay, sorry.
no, it is. It is absolutely uplifting because the idea is get your information from reliable sources. It's like the information
Although,
that you.
did you see
Mhm.
those really hilarious little Lego videos?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, those are great. Okay, except for those. Those are really
Okay.
funny.
Yeah, and the ones, the monkeys and things like. Okay, we
Yeah.
got those. Okay, you
Punch the
know.
monkey, yeah.
Yeah, the monkey. I'm going to say later. All those, But what we're talking about is, in times like this too, is get your information from reliable
Yeah.
sources.
And a good
Again,
source. Yeah.
and good sources,
Yeah.
reliable, good sources, and spend time like yourselves. You are reliable sources. So that's why thank you so much for allowing us to have this meeting together, because this is something we can share. We'll take clips of these things. We will, like I said, we'll eventually even have I would like to have a live session pretty soon coming up so that we can get the sense of community, which we're probably a lot of people are missing. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we may not have all the answers, but we have more control than we think. And it's how we show up, how we support our families, how we support our businesses, how we stay connected. Okay, we just want you to know it from CBC Dubai, from GEMS, from our professionals here, from our other business councils. You're not navigating this alone. Thanks you so much. And thank you from CBC Dubai. And I'm going to say good night. Good night.
Thank you so much, Diana. And thank you for everyone for being on this webinar with us. Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll see you later. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very
It
much.
was